We're just getting kicked off right now. If you're live streaming on YouTube, thank you for joining us. We're going to be going through some fun agenda tonight, and we're also going to get into some of the business aspects of MRVBC later in the meeting, and that portion will be the portion for MRVBC members. Let me give you a quick outline here. One thing I'll remind you, if you're connected in through Zoom, is to please keep yourself muted. If you have questions that come up, feel free to enter them into your Zoom chat, or if you're on YouTube, you can enter questions in there. So we'll be monitoring that. So here's a quick summary of the meeting tonight. I'm going to be providing a presentation, a short presentation on the front end of the meeting. Then we'll get into a conversation about backcountry skiing in Vermont and the outdoor recreation economy. And we have two guests with us. One is Matt Williams with the Catamount Trail Association, our parent organization. We're a chapter of the Catamount Trail Association, as well as Kelly Ault, who's with the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance. Once we go through that conversation that I'm really looking forward to, there'll be an opportunity for questions and answers with Kelly and Matt. And so, again, feel free to put questions and comments into the chat in either Zoom or your YouTube. Once we get to 8 o'clock, we're making a switch at that point to our formal business meeting. So at that point, the YouTube stream will end. We'll continue on Zoom. All MRVBC members should have received an email with the Zoom link. So if you're a member right now and you're on YouTube, I would encourage you to connect through Zoom. That way you'll continue to have access once we get into the business meeting at 8 o'clock. We'll be talking about finances. We'll be talking about membership. And we'll also be talking about voting for 2021 board officers. So I'd like to talk about a few highlights, if one dare say, for 2020. 2020 was a challenging year, as we all know, for many reasons. But when it comes to skiing, there were certainly some highlights. So I'd like to touch on a few things that MRVBC has been working on. So last spring, before COVID shut things down, we had 2 tours. And that was one additional from the year before. So what I should step back a little. We are beginning our 3rd year as a chapter of the Catamount Trail Association. And we've grown into that role as a chapter. So one of those pieces is providing tours. So myself, and I should introduce myself, Steve Sharp, president of the River Valley Backcountry Coalition, led tours along with others, board members, and folks who signed up for the tours. Those tours included 2 places. One is Fen Basin, which is part of the Camel's Hump Management Unit, part of the state forest and parklands. This is an area where the Catamount Trail has a secondary trail. The picture you're seeing is a section of that trail, and it was the day that we went out. It really was a beautiful day, great sunshine. As we got up higher, we found some nice powder skiing. So what we had down here wasn't a lot, but once we got up high, it was really nice. So that was a fun tour. Had a good time. Later, a few weeks later, we did a tour up into Lincoln Gap, and that was an excellent tour as well. Conditions were good, not quite as good as they were in Fen Basin in terms of powder conditions, but we had good snowpack. I would encourage folks to visit our website at mrvbc.org. You can see the tours that we have planned for this year, assuming COVID conditions allow. So right now, we wouldn't be able to hold a tour under the current requirements that the state has in terms of groups getting together. But our hope is that by the end of February into early March, when we have our tours planned, that'll be an opportunity that we'll be able to engage in. Another thing that we did last year was to continue our conversation about earning your turns. So back in 2019, so going back even further, we had our first annual. In 2020, we had our second annual, which was about a month ago in middle of December. And this time we did it virtually, but we had a great turnout online, a great conversation where we had 3 chapters from the Catamount Trail Association, River Valley Backcountry Coalition, the Northeast Kingdom Backcountry Coalition, as well as DHASH, the Dutch Hill Hikers and Skiers Association. I always get their name a little bit off, DHASH or DASH. We also had River Green and Sugarbush representatives engaged as members of participants in the panel. And we also had Mike Schneider, who is the chair of the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative, as well as the commissioner of Vermont Forest and Parks. So really interesting, engaging conversation. That event is still available. You can get to it by going to our website and looking under events. Look at the Earn Your Turns Roundtable, and there is a link in there that you can access the recorded video. We continue to have great support from our sponsors, Jameson Insurance, local Valley Insurance Company, Lawson's local brewery here in the Valley, Onion River Outdoors, local outdoor shop in Montpelier, Clearwater Sports, again, right here in the Valley, and Broadleaf Landscaping. They're a local landscaping firm, and we've been just very pleased by the support. It's also been really exciting to see the support we've had from membership. We have seen growth in membership over the past 2 years. So going into our 3rd year, we're excited that we've seen that level of support, and we appreciate that. We'll provide more details when we get into the business meeting in terms of actual numbers. Now, our board of directors in 2020 consisted of the following individuals. We appreciate all the work that they've done to help keep us going, keep us engaged in terms of the various projects that we've been working on, and keeping us engaged with the community in terms of our outreach and messaging that we do. The other thing I'd like to highlight before I get into sort of some of our goals in 2021 is sort of the status of projects. Always a big question. When is MRVBC going to have some managed zones? That has been an ongoing conversation that we've been having over the past 2 years as a chapter with the state of Vermont, specifically Vermont Forest and Parks, and specifically with the Camel's Hump Management Unit. We've identified 3 areas in the unit that we believe have potential, and we've conveyed information and had conversations with Vermont Forest and Parks through their planning process. As some may know, they've been working on revising their Camel's Hump Management Plan for a number of years. Our hope is that they will get to the point of approving it real soon here. To some degree, that has the the pace of that has slowed us down a bit in terms of being able to move forward on specific proposals as they've been working to finalize the plan. But we remain hopeful that that'll happen soon, and we'll be able to submit a formal proposals that are more detailed than what we've submitted so far. We've also engaged with private landowners in conversations about possibilities, and we see some real exciting opportunities there as well. So those are ongoing efforts that take time, and we're staying committed and staying patient and persistent in hopes that we'll get a breakthrough. So in 2021, we want to continue to stimulate the conversation. Future backcountry in Vermont and all the issues surrounding it. We anticipate we'll help organize another Earn Your Turns roundtable. Hopefully by next fall, early winter, we'll all be able to gather together in an actual space. We want to be sure to retain and grow our membership as well. We'd like to get to 125 plus, which maybe gives you a clue as to where we are now. But we want to see steady growth, and I think that's something we can achieve. Backcountry tours, certainly in 2021, as I mentioned earlier, this spring or late winter, end of February, early March, we have some tours on the books. Again, check our website, get more information. We are capping the number of individuals that can attend because of COVID conditions. We're capping it at 10 for the tours. They are beginning to fill up. So if you're interested, you ought to check out the information there and read about our tours and what they're like. We would like to think that by the end of 2021, we would be at that point where we might have a green light for an actual project. I think that's a goal that's achievable, but there are things that are beyond our control, so we'll see. The other area that we wanted to do in 2020, but because of COVID, find ourselves pushing into 2021 is potentially hands-on workshops in the valley or near the valley, where we bring in some first aid workshops. In other words, be able to sign up enough people to have an actual backcountry first aid kind of workshop right here in the valley, so it's a little easier for folks to participate. So how can you get involved and help us with our mission? The best way that you could do that right now is to renew your membership if you're already a member, or to become a member. That is really the best way to help build this coalition and to build long-term sustainability and give us the resources we need to be able to do the work we'd like to do once we get the green light. So that's the formal part of my presentation, and we're now transitioning into the next part of the meeting tonight, which is a conversation about backcountry skiing and the outdoor recreation economy in Vermont. I'm pleased to have Kelly Ault here from the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance. She's the Executive Director with that organization. And we also have Matt Williams, who's the Executive Director with the Catamount Trail Association, our parent organization. We're grateful to both of them for making the time to participate. And Matt, I'll hand it to you. I'm going to unshare now.
Thanks, Steve. And thanks everybody for being here. I guess I just said, I think there are some people live streaming on YouTube too. And if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And, you know, it's a relatively small group on Zoom. So, you know, we're we're sort of setting this up as a conversation, and it'll be relatively informal. So if you have questions as we go, please do feel free to jump in with them, or put them in the chat, and Alan from MRVBC will be moderating that and jumping in as well. But either way, we'd love to address what you all are thinking about too, and work it into this chat. But you know, thanks, Kelly, for joining us, and I guess we'll just jump in, you know, sort of off the top. And if Kelly, you could just chat a little bit about how are you seeing the outdoor recreation economy at this point? I think that term probably means different things to different people. So can you sort of summarize that for us a little bit, and sort of give us a sense of the scope of what you mean when you talk about the outdoor recreation economy in Vermont?
Yeah, thanks, Matt, and thanks, Steve. And that was a great orientation to the work of the River Valley Backcountry Coalition. It's exciting to see the progress in a short period of time. And as I will talk about, there's a lot of potential for the future. So this is an exciting time to be a backcountry skier or rider, and to live in Vermont. But sure, I'll get at the outdoor recreation economy. First, I just want to describe VOBA for a second, and let you know that I live in Middlesex, and so I've been a backcountry skier in the River Valley for the last 25 years. And so I know it's a special place, and that there's a unique community and opportunities, and a business community that's very supportive and direct partners with a lot of the recreation efforts happening. So what you're doing in the Valley is a real model for other places across the state, and perhaps beyond. So I just want to validate the work that you're doing, and say keep it up, because everybody's watching and learning from you. The Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance is a nonprofit organization of outdoor recreation industry, nonprofit organizations, and individual members that provide, sell, and produce outdoor recreation goods, services, and products. The industry in Vermont is wide and deep. It represents not just specialty retailers and recreation facilities, but manufacturers, those in media, marketing, professional services, sales, distribution, guiding. It is a real very broad sector, or broad industry. It is a sector that spans many industries in Vermont, and I'll get at that in a little bit. VOBA is 2.5 years old now, and its mission is to strengthen, expand, attract, and retain outdoor recreation economy businesses in Vermont. And so we're really focusing on making sure the industry is vibrant and growing and strong and networked, so it can be a terrific partner in some of the recreation infrastructure efforts, and be ambassadors to those who are participating in outdoor activities, making sure they have the gear, the education, the knowledge, the support that they need to be successful and be healthy. So the industry recognizes that the 3 pillars of economy, infrastructure, and participation are interlinked and intertwined. And so that's kind of behind the mission of the organization's work. To get at the big outdoor recreation economy definition, it definitely is an emerging definition, and it goes well beyond what has typically been defined as a recreation economy. It's a very diversified industry, as I described, and but it's often been thought of as a tourism-based economy. So we know tourism is significantly important, and especially in mountain towns and valleys like the Mad River, tourism provides a lot of income from visitors, from people who have second homes or perhaps third homes. They're really bringing some income and some vitality to the community, and that's very important. But we've also come to realize that the sector is much broader and diversified, which actually is very helpful, because as we've seen during the pandemic, it has allowed the anchoring of outdoor recreation opportunities beyond just with our tourism base and our visitors, that opportunity being somewhat decimated and uncertain for the months to come. So it's been there's been a real recognition about the complexity of the outdoor recreation economy that goes beyond just tourism services to those that are manufacturing products. They are producing, public relations services, media services, sales services, and so much more. And then there's a concentric circle of businesses who are benefit from or are involved in the outdoor recreation economy beyond outdoor products and services. And so that gets into the hospitality sector, that gets into tech, that gets into many other businesses. And you've seen that constellation in the Valley of so many businesses benefit from the interest and the investment in outdoor recreation in the community. And so we've come to really talk about the economy as being a much broader industry than has previously been identified. We know it has growing economic impact, and over the last decade, the numbers have been telling the story, and the US Bureau of Economic Analysis started tracking this data and providing state level data beginning in 2017. And we've learned that the outdoor recreation economy, with snow sports being the primary driver, has been the fastest growing industry towards Vermont's gross domestic product. It surpassed construction and other industries that we see as being real anchors to our economy. In 2019, it contributed 5.2% of Vermont's GDP, and that was the second highest of any state in the country. So we're really doing a lot of things well. And as I said, snow sports was the highest contributor, and only behind Colorado and Utah. So we're really up there for being a small state, small brave state. And finally, I think the tie to backcountry skiing and riding, I know the outdoor activities can be broad, and as the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative defines it, if it's out, it's in, and that could mean everything from snow tubing to backcountry skiing. But I think we're looking at the trends during COVID in businesses, in equipment sales, and specialty retail sales, that backcountry skiing and riding is one of the bright spots. It's one of the big winners in that we've seen a tremendous interest in people getting into backcountry skiing and riding, purchasing equipment, buying accessories, trying to figure out where to go, and supporting those entities that offer options for pursuing the sport, even if they were alpine skiers before, cross-country skiers before, or not even skiers before. Some of the data, not to drown in data, but I think it's telling that a couple of our market research partners have done some analysis that show that the total backcountry related equipment sales from August to October were up 76% from 2019. Split boards were up 151%, and ski equipment, including boots and bindings, were up. Accessory sales, avalanche beacons, probes, climbing skins, up 74%. So those numbers are mind-blowing, and everybody's taking notice. And so now we have this wonderful problem of having all these participants, new and existing, looking for places to play, and we want them to do that safely and with stewardship, and be able to support some of the organizations that are managing the resource. So I'll kind of stop there. There's obviously more to talk about, but I'll kind of stop there with those definitions and those data points to hopefully get us excited.
Thanks, Kelly. That's a really helpful overview, and I just want to thank you for your work. And it's really great to have VOBA as a force in the state, and the CTA has been around for 35 years, and working on backcountry skiing, and the business community has been critical, from the beginning, really, in getting the trail off the ground, and in helping to support the growth of managed zones and everything in between. But to have sort of an organized state level voice for outdoor businesses, and the work that you all are doing to broaden the tent, or broaden the way we think about outdoor recreation businesses, I think is really great. Really impactful for outdoor recreation groups, and ultimately for users too. That support's really critical. So thank you. for the work you're doing there. And the one point I would just make on your last piece about the growth in sales is just that the fascinating thing to me is just the way that growth is sort of being built on top of growth. I've gotten questions this year like, how's this year going to look compared to a normal year? And I keep saying, well, normal for backcountry skiing the last 5 years has been pretty much exponential growth already. And we work with the SE group in Burlington to do trail counter analysis and economic impact analysis. And we've seen use at trailheads like Brandon Gap, like Nebraska Valley and Stowe just go up and up and up, and at times double year over year over the last 3 or 4 years. So we'll see what happens when we get some real snow this year. But I'm wondering, I think certainly the CTA and our chapters have really felt the impact and benefit of the connections between outdoor businesses and our work. And I think we've been intertwined from the beginning, particularly with the hospitality industry and inns along the trail. But I'm wondering if you could elaborate sort of on that point a bit from the business perspective, and just talk. I think it really is a symbiotic relationship between the two, and both sort of from a dollars and cents standpoint, but also from a sort of cultural standpoint. And wondering if you can speak a little bit to that, to the way businesses and outdoor rec groups and participants can sort of work together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I like the symbiotic relationship term, because if you talk to any of the well-established companies from Burton to Darn Tough to Orvis, who have been here for decades, and even going back to a lot of the ski industry that was based in Williston decades ago, I mean, the reason that they located in Vermont, and many of them are still here, is because of this culture in outdoor recreation. Many of their employees are in the woods. They're skiing with you, they're mountain biking, they're fishing. And so they see Vermont and these places as being, part of their quality of life, part of their workplace environment. And Burton would even say that they are here because there's no other place to better test their equipment than on the icy slopes or the variable conditions of Vermont winters. And so, not only are they just here to sell products, they're here because of the culture, because of the landscape that they can have their businesses embedded in. And be entrepreneur and have an entrepreneurial, innovative type culture, which Vermont fosters. I think so. So these businesses have often had a socially responsible mission of their own around outdoor recreation, and sought out organizations or places or programs that they want to support through direct dollars, or through donations, or through volunteers with their employees. And I think that that's something to continue, because it creates a shared ownership over the protection of these in the access of these places. And so I think that not only are the big companies, but even companies that are relocating here or are coming here, that precision manufacturers in Lyndonville recruited in a mountain bike magazine for one of their employees, and hired someone because they love to ride mountain bikes at Kingdom Trail. So I think companies are seeing this value and want to give back and ensure that that resource and the quality of the experience is maintained. So I do think that there's a lot of partnerships that can continue to be developed around that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the volunteer programs piece and the shared ownership piece is a huge part of it too, and just sort of tie into the culture. But it's those tie-ins are really great, and great to hear you sort of speak to that. shifting gears a little bit sort of to the what's sort of happening right now. I know we've all sort of been following what's the trends over the summer and what's been what happened with mountain biking and hiking and water sports and seemingly everything outdoor related over the summer, and trying to project that onto the winter as well. But wondering if you can speak from the from the VOBA perspective on what you all have been seeing. I know you spoke to this a little bit in the growth of gear sales, but any sort of broader trends that you've been noticing.
Sure. I can speak to a couple. One, I just tapped on, the relocation trends, and we're seeing it in real estate. We're seeing it in school enrollment. We're seeing it in many of the actual national data about people moving to outdoor communities from cities to seek out a quality of life, and have decided they want to be closer to the mountains. And so I think that's both, it's an opportunity because we can support outdoor enthusiasts coming to Vermont, and then being someone who is an entrepreneur and starts a business, providing to our tax base, being an enthusiastic, passionate member of our community. So that's just something to figure out how to welcome and invite the relocation as a way to support infrastructure that is needed. I think the outdoor hubs trend, where a lot of communities are emerging as positioning themselves as recreation centers that were overlooked before, and the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative and the 9 communities it's given grants to, is an example of places like Poultney or places like Randolph, who have really emerged as leaders in outdoor recreation, especially in backcountry, in the Randolph-Rochester area, and have really developed have put their entire community, all their stakeholders have come together around this brand and this shared vision for how to develop and benefit from that image and that delivery of services. And then the other trend is new participants. So it's no secret that you've described some of the increasing use of increasing people using the outdoors for mental and physical health reasons, especially during the pandemic. The Snow Sports Industries of America has some terrific participation research on skiers, even though that's still coming out, but that there is this real uptick in people getting outdoors, and people who haven't been outdoors before. They were, if they were, on the gym treadmill, and then they became, bike path walkers, and then they, now they're winter hikers. So you're seeing this progression of participants, and I think businesses are trying to really support their getting outside part of a frequent, regular part of their life, and support that. Pinnacle Ski and Sports and Stowe describes, a woman coming in and asking for that flashlight for your head, like not even knowing what a headlamp is to get outside at night, but wanting that person to feel comfortable, asking for that, and not intimidated. And I think a lot of times sports, especially backcountry skiing or mountain biking, can be intimidating. It can seem like the only image that matters is the summit seeker, hardcore, aggro type activity. But what we want to change is that image, and really talk about recreation as being something for everyone, for every community, and really set up your systems to provide that access, for those very different needs.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. I've talked to a lot of people recently who, they think backcountry skiing and they think the person like jumping off a cliff, or skiing some really aggressive line somewhere. And I try to say, like, well, that's great, it's fun, but that's not, backcountry skiing is like sliding through the woods, on your skis, and it's that experience of being outside in the winter is really special and magical, I think. And there's a lot of ways to enjoy it, and it's really cool to see the broadening of trends. And one of the things we were talking about before this was the way that's starting to get reflected in marketing too. That some of those marketing images are really shifting away from the really extreme images and focused more on that sort of just participatory, getting outside sort of theme, which is just really great to see, I think. One other trend that we, in just talking with partners, obviously we don't do a lot of analysis on summer use of the trail because most of it's not open for summer use. But one of the interesting things that we picked up from other folks was that they didn't see huge increases in use at sort of the prime trailheads that you would expect to just see that always get a lot of use. But what they did see was a huge dispersal of use as people looked more locally, and so they saw trailheads that often are pretty quiet getting big spikes in use, as opposed to say Camel's Hump or Mansfield, or Perry Hill or Kingdom Trails or something like that. So it's interesting to sort of see that broadening. And I'm wondering, maybe it's too early to say, but it seems like that sort of lines up with what you're talking about with outdoor hubs, and as people really zero in on local recreation, that could be a boon to Main Street businesses and those really localized economies. Are you starting to see those trends sort of be self-reinforcing at all?
Yes, just talking to an economic researcher recently who talked about in Whitefish, Montana, they're seeing that locals are providing 2 times the spending in local communities than visitors. So there is a lot of focus on, well, we need the tourists, we need the visitors to boost our businesses, but as these economies start becoming more organized locally and networked, then I think that we can look to communities to support themselves, not solely. We obviously will always need a tourism economy, but I think it will help us to have multiple options, and locals being one of them. And then I guess just talking about Randolph, and of course what we've done in the Valley and in other places, that so many communities have had the opportunity to invest in their recreation infrastructure in recent years. And with COVID, there was a windfall of funding that came through, whether it was through coronavirus relief funds or soon to be land and water conservation funds or other sources from private and public agencies. There has been a lot of investment in recreation, and that's exciting. And so now kind of making those connections with the business community can really help bring that system to its full potential. And so I guess I would also point to policy as being a driver of outdoor recreation, and making sure that we have the investment and it's prepared. We have somewhat the gift of time with travel restrictions and with COVID, and that we are all out in more frequency in our backyards in nearby communities. But the gates haven't opened at the borders. And so we do have the time to figure out our planning locally, working with partners, building out the infrastructure, finding the out of the way undiscovered trailheads to support. So when we do have a post-pandemic economy and we have travelers again, that we can handle that load, and we have new and exciting and emerging opportunities to support those who come and play and those who are working here and have businesses here.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think that's really the key. I mean, I think that the vision of the local hubs, and you see that success, and it's so inspiring, and you want to see that replicated across the state, as much as possible for communities that are really motivated to make it happen and see it fitting, and that sort of those locally driven initiatives are huge. And CTA is certainly doing a lot of work on the state level as well, to particularly on trails oversight, work to try to streamline that process for trails groups and make it easier for the next the next RASTA, the next MRVBC, the next NEKBC dash to sort of build on the work that's been done and implement that elsewhere. But I'm wondering, a few minutes left here before we move to questions, just what would your I think sometimes the policy work feels a little bit inaccessible, and some of it is just driven by state level organizations. But can you speak a little bit, Kelly, to sort of how people can get involved and help move this work forward? Because I do think it takes more than just organizations like CTA and VOBA working on it.
Right, and many groups are working are pushing policy levers and building support and relationships within state agencies. They have the built-in capacity to do that in CTA and VOBA and in others. And VOBA does have a function of working on policy around the outdoor recreation economy. But there's also a lot that individuals can do and local organizations can do. I mean, we are a close-knit. We have close-knit communities, and our legislators are often our neighbors or our business people. I know there are some real recreation fans that are in the legislature in the River Valley. And so just having those relationships and talking with legislators about what the needs are, what's happening, what's exciting, what are the possibilities for the future is great for developing an understanding of this sector, of the industry, of the ecosystem that is required for it to hum along. And so it's not too early to start talking with folks that in your community that are legislators or policymakers about what's coming down the road. I think following the news, signing up for a newsletter, following the updates that the statewide organizations put together, just paying attention, I think is a good thing to do. We all should be, I don't want to use the word should, but during this time we've seen that it's really important to be paying attention to what's happening in policy and in government. And I think that it's a good way to make sure that the outdoor interests are represented and included in policy solutions that unfold over time.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's so important. Now, the only thing I would add is just that, even if you think your legislators are already on board or agree with this, it still is great to get in touch with them. I think, every time I do it, they so appreciate hearing from people, and priorities matter too, and where this falls on sort of their list of priorities, broadly speaking, matters as well. And so, I think it makes a big difference when they hear from constituents saying what, just letting them know what matters, so to their voters. So even if you think they agree with what to say, it's still great to get in touch with them and just start a conversation. So.
It is. I mean, and sometimes they're actually in lobbying their colleagues. So if they can come and say, this is why, this is what's happening in my community, my constituents are saying this or asking this, or this is happening, then it allows them to better do their work and have backing when they're negotiating a situation. And I think with the outdoors, it's not a luxury issue. It is embedded in public health. It is embedded in our economic vitality. So I think that it's always relevant to the conversations of the time, even now when we're really focused on COVID and COVID and economic relief, and even just if even just talking to legislators about the businesses in the community that really need some support, because you're going to need them to be there next summer serving those tourists that come, or those recreationists that come in. So picking an angle and just showing that the economy is really the outdoor recreation economy is really multifaceted, and there's always a need for investment.
Yeah, great point. Alan, do we have any questions floating in? we can keep going too, but want to make sure we're getting to questions as they come up as well.
I have not received any questions, but if anyone has any, please feel free to submit them and we can address them. But right now we can just keep going forward with whatever you like.
Great. Well, I do think that point about the role that trails have played in, they play an ongoing role in physical and mental health outcomes, but I think this year in particular, that has just been driven home in such a poignant way, and has become a new outlet and source of solace for a lot of people, I think, and so I think that's been an increasing focus of VOREC and other groups over the last couple of years, but it would be great to see that continue. And I think it's maybe, Kelly, if we want to shift a little bit here, I think on that point, one of the pieces that we've started to think more and more about is, okay, that's great. And it's great to have an amazing asset like recreational asset like Brandon Gap or like Nebraska Valley. But that's only local for so many people. And so, how do we think about access, and how do we make it possible, make it easier for people to get to these resources without having to get into their car, and sort of lower those barriers. So I'm wondering if there's sort of, I know you all are thinking about those same issues, and it obviously, we get to sort of diversity and inclusion work as well, which is so critical. They're sort of interrelated issues, but how's VOBA sort of thinking about those issues right now, and sort of how thinking sort of collaboratively with outdoor rec groups moving forward on that.
And this is in regard to diversity and inclusion work, or,
well, I think there's sort of
more infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
accessibility.
They're interrelated, right? In some ways, but also potentially discrete issues, but certainly you got kind of we feel like we sort of have to address both. I think making it easier for everybody to access trails, but then there's sort of specific initiatives on top of that, certainly for the CTA, focus specifically on equity and inclusion. And I think a big part of that for us, the VOREC talks about it, if you're not out, you're in. And I think what we found is a lot of there's sort of an element of like people who don't quite know that they want to go out skiing, right? Like we work with a lot of new American students in Winooski who just, they come from backgrounds where there's no cultural connection to winter. And so, where they grew up, there's no snow. And so like, they don't really think of, and their parents certainly don't think of winter as something to sort of get out and enjoy. But for a lot of them, it becomes a really, big sort of community building thing for them, and it's something they start to look forward to year after year. So that those it's sort of interrelated but different at the same time. But I know we worked with the business community on some of the initiatives, but I'd love to hear sort of more broadly how VOBA is thinking about them.
Sure, and VOBA has spent a lot of time since the spring thinking about this and developing some approaches to justice, equity, diversity, inclusion in both workspaces as well as outdoor places. So we've really felt like we had a role as an industry to start to acknowledge where there are barriers to BIPOC and other LGBTQ and other underrepresented communities, those of all abilities. And so we've really tried to identify where some of those opportunities are to better educate ourselves and adjust the way our workplaces are in hiring, in operations, in leadership, in marketing, and representation. When you open up any magazine, all you see are, what a standard kind of image. And then also think about what organizations are supporting access and trying to reduce some of those barriers, and to getting people outside so they can be exposed and build skills and get excited about being outside and being in the winter. And there are a lot of organizations that do that, from the National Brotherhood of Skiers to a lot of local groups. A lot of businesses are providing gear, because sometimes gear can be the barrier. It can be expensive to go skiing. And so that alone is going to inhibit participation. So I think that we've really tried to recognize and inventory some of the practices that businesses are embarking on, that are really going to change the diversity, equity, and inclusion within the industry, and also in the outdoors. I think we have a long way to go. I think the Indigenous community is another opportunity, and there have been some real strides in recognizing Abenaki lands, a lot of the state parks, the bill that passed last session, which will change the state parks names to the Abenaki names of some of these places. Recreationists, I've seen social media posts with backcountry skiers on the summits of mountains, talking about using the Abenaki name of where they are. I think people are really also recognizing, Indigenous connections to the outdoors, and that's a really important point for us all.
Thanks. We've got a couple comments rolling in, and in the Zoom chat. Bill mentions that intrinsic provisions in outdoor shop and Hingham Mass is biopic owned, and how about reaching out to school groups and offering symposiums and entry trips. And sort of on that, Kevin noted that a barrier for many kids learning to ski and enjoy the outdoors is an economic one, and every kid deserves this opportunity to be inspired by nature. And what are outdoor companies and organizations doing to provide a level playing field? I'll just speak briefly to those. The CTA Ski Cubs program is a free youth learn to ski program that works with primarily students in Chittenden and Addison counties, including New American students in Winooski and Burlington, that has been running for about 10 years. And we provide transportation and equipment and instruction to those kids. We've worked really hard to expand it over the last couple of years, and it more than doubled last year. And we're working through the schools. It's really challenging this year, obviously, but we've already worked with almost as many kids this year as we did last year, which is over 500 students. And we've had great support from the outdoor industry, Fisher, Patagonia, OGE, a number of other retailers and companies have been really supportive. It's been amazing this year. We're literally getting, since October, our phone has been ringing a couple times a week with another school asking, or two schools asking, hey, can we set up a program in our community? And, at this point, we actually tried to buy more skis to do more work this winter. And like everybody, kids skis are sold out just like everything else. So we called basically every shop we could think of, and we got a few, but anyway, it's really the demand out there is huge. And we're not the only organization working to meet it for sure, but we're certainly trying to do more and more in that space, and have had great support from the business side of things to try to expand those programs. Kelly, feel free to jump in if you have anything to add. There's also a comment from Liza Walker asking if there are any lessons that have been learned from other sites or chapters that could impact MRVBC's approach here in establishing new terrain. I think one of the keys there is it's not a satisfying answer, but is patience. It has taken a long time in every instance. There's been pretty significant growth in thinking about 5 or 6 years ago was when Brandon Gap, I think maybe 6 years ago now, Brandon Gap opened, and it feels like there have been a bunch of new zones open since then, but they've all taken several years, and at least in the planning stages. And that time's getting a little bit shorter as we sort of get the management plans dialed in, and some of those things are a little bit more replicable, but the relationships take a long time, and the planning process takes a long time, and citing things well takes a long time. So, you know, I think that's one thing that has been urged frequently, is just that patience and diligence. But I see Steve jumping on here, and I know he's had a lot of conversations with other chapter heads, and we'll have some great perspective on this as well.
Well, I'd like to jump on that thread as we get toward the tail end here. I think, I guess more specifically, are there policy issues that are holding back the outdoor recreation economy in Vermont, and how can recreation groups and outdoor businesses work together on solving those challenges?
Well, I could just mention the big issues, the Act 250 reform around recreation trail, and the Outdoor Business Alliance has been talking to the trail groups about adding a business voice to some of the work they've been doing for years to really find an alternative mechanism to best management practices, alternative framework to trails. That will make a big difference. And I know Matt could speak a lot more eloquently, and even some of you on the call, about Act 250, but that I think is going to be a big issue in the coming months. And so it is something that the Mad River Valley Backcountry Coalition could weigh in on or be a resource for. Certainly, that's a big one. And then I will say that we're not out of the woods on the economy. I talked about some very astounding data, but it doesn't mean that bell curve isn't just as steep, just as low on the other on the ends. A lot of businesses are really in rough shape, and they really need to get through the pandemic. And so I think economic relief, financial relief, support for workforce programs, whether it's unemployment insurance or paycheck protection program, those are policy issues that we still need to advocate for. Otherwise, we won't have this really rich web of companies to support our outdoor recreation interests on the other side of the pandemic.
Well, let's see. What do you think, Matt? We're at 8. I don't know if you see other questions in the chat.
I'm not.
I'm sure we could go on for quite a while having a interesting conversation about the multifaceted topics around backcountry skiing and the economy, and all of the other topics that you guys so eloquently touched on. I would like to thank you very much for taking the time, Matt and Kelly, for participating in the MRVBC Annual Meeting. Your insight is appreciated. Your time's appreciated. I know I picked up a lot of information here. I'm sure we'll continue this conversation. And I guess with that, we're going to make our transition now into the business meeting. So what that means is I'll be switching the YouTube live stream off as we switch into the business meeting. If you're a MRVBC member, hopefully you're connected through Zoom and you can stay connected, and we'll get into the business meeting. So bear with me here a second while I make the change.